back to Cinema Boulevard. My name is Andrew McGregor Hoyer.
My name is Matthew Ha.
And how's your day going so far?
It's been going sort of in a transitionary period right now. So we're at a new location. That's all I'll pretty much say for the time being. So we're dealing with a slightly different setup, but overall still managed to get that up and running. So
yeah, that's good. That's very good. We travel not too much. But yeah, I mean, we're back in action here, episode 15. And
we're
yeah,
milestone, sort of.
Sort of milestone. I mean, we didn't really say much for our 10th episode, but still making it to 15. That's pretty impressive. Think about it. It's already been almost half a year. Almost what? No, it's been like 8 months since we started.
It's been more than half a year.
Yeah. It's been about 8 months since we first started recording. So it's been awesome. Just taking this ride, see where it goes. So, but yeah, I guess before we jump into the films in question today, there obviously is some recent development in terms of the Paramount-Warner Brothers merger. And if I remember correctly, is that the whole deal is right now at a standstill. The merger is still technically happening, but 11 U.S. states have put in a lawsuit toward Paramount Global to prevent the merger from happening between Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery, which has been happening pretty much since this January. I know we talked about it a little bit early in the year, but it's been a pretty big deal just for the film industry in general, and probably for a lot of creatives out there. This was a $111 billion merger, and right now it's completely frozen due to the antitrust lawsuit from these states. And a judge has recently scheduled the trial for those lawsuits for March 2027. And a big thing that does sort of seem to see the tide turning a little bit just in the favor of the consumers who do not want this merger to happen in general is that starting in September of this year, if Paramount and Warner Brothers can't get a deal made, which is looking pretty unlikely due to the scheduled antitrust trial, Paramount has to pay $7 million per day to Warner Brothers for the delayed merger. And at least for me, it's pretty on edge, just because I don't want to see this deal come through. I don't want to see it happen at all. I mean, this thing shouldn't have happened in the first place. It's just, to me, it's just the studio executives sort of getting a little bit greedy with this whole thing, and kind of kills the level of competition we see in the film industry. But this is a pretty promising turn of the tide on Paramount, but it's pretty insane that this is even, that we are at such a standstill for almost another few months. So
I'm at least glad we're getting to the point that we have some sort of standstill, because worst case scenario, it went through, got approved, and no one would say anything about it, which obviously that was not going to be the case. But the fact that we're at a standstill, in my opinion, is a good thing, because like you said, this should not have happened. And in my opinion, if you care about art in any way at all, you should not be happy about the Paramount-Warner Brothers merger. For all the reasons you said, the sense of a conglomerate monopoly happening a la what happened in the 30s and 40s Hollywood system could easily reemerge. And we already saw the sort of sprouts of that when Disney bought Fox, and how they essentially just acquired an entire back catalog just to shove it in the vault and not do anything because they just wanted to have full control of, I don't know, Star Wars and Marvel essentially. But it's also just, we've touched upon this before in a previous episode, the fact that it's going to be under the control of Paramount when they've rather infamously have not had the best track record in the past post-pandemic years for films and also management. It's just not a good look at all. So I'm I don't know. It's do you think that even after the standstill that the deal will just be called off? I don't think it's going to, unfortunately, at this rate. But the fact that they're having some more deliberation about what to do is at least showing, well, they are kind of taking their time with it.
Yeah, it is something that is taking a bit. I think initially the deal was supposed to be finished by November of this year, but I
Mm-hmm.
think, it should have been expected that antitrust lawsuits were going to happen. Um, that's just sort of the nature of it. And, like the Supreme Court approved the merger. So, like, the deal could still happen, but if like those antitrust lawsuits happen to succeed, then the merger will be called off, and then Paramount is going to have to owe Warner Brothers $7 billion in just the whole fees because they have to like pay them for the fact that the merger didn't happen. So you're sort of thinking this is going to be a very risky endeavor for Paramount to try to continue
Mm-hmm.
on with this merger with these lawsuits in effect, and it's gonna be really interesting, to say the least. So I think we're pretty much like at a point where everybody just doesn't want this to happen outside of David Ellison and David Zaslav, who
And some
I think,
stockholders.
yeah, stockholders, like, I don't know. I think like people have a lot of opinions on both sides, I mean, I have a lot of opinions on David Zaslav just because of how he's treated, you know, animation, and the animators, especially those who like work so hard with Cartoon Network Studios and Adult Swim to get their stuff made, and all of a sudden it gets removed from HBO Max and is now considered lost media just because Zaslav wanted tax write-offs.
Tax.
Yeah, and then of course, we'll see in about a few weeks here with Coyote versus Acme and see how that will succeed. But that film, the reason why it's such a big deal is because Zaslav and Warner Brothers ultimately canceled the release of that film and just said it was like, unwatchable or whatever. Then Catch Up Entertainment comes in and sort of saves the day so this film could have another life. So we're sort of seeing a point where it's like, there's a lot of like corporate stranglehold that Warner Brothers is having with animation. And then you get the other side with like Paramount, where, it's never been a secret from a political standpoint about David Ellison's like favoritism of the Trump administration, where, that's a pretty divisive, administration, oddly enough. And so like people sort of are seeing this whole merger as like, Ellison looking to, also consume CNN, which is normally left leaning. And then you get CBS News, which is like more a centrist leaning, but could sort of teeter on conservative. And this sort of like how people are not a big fan of the fact that like, they're sort of seeing more of like a control over two of the biggest news stations in the country. And so you're sort of, it is like a point where it's, a lot of people disagree, where it's like people kind of see it as like a political interest. Recently in the New York Times, that was actually yesterday, David Ellison released a opinions or an op-ed for the New York Times to talk about justifying the merger. And he makes a point about like the fact that like, the reason people are worried about is just because of the news. And he's trying to go out of his way to like sort of justify like the whole idea like the journalism from CBS News like goes doesn't cater to anybody or any cause necessarily, but you know there is still sort of an iffiness there, especially with his conservative ties to the Trump administration. So we're sort of like thinking, what is like, are we sort of being lied to? People sort of feel they're being duped by it, and then he tries to sort of justify it by saying like he wants he's thinking the Hollywood system is sort of a dated system in some respects. And he's trying to like see this as sort of a change in the system. And he's trying to make it about the movies initially, but obviously consuming an entire company that doesn't only have movies, but they have TV shows and sports deals with TNT and of course CNN. So you're sort of at a point where it's like, the baggage that's sort of coming with it is sort of a cause for concern for a lot of people. And, that's kind of, where we sort of think like this isn't all about the movies, is it? So that's like kind of the thing that is sort of, making us sort of on edge, It's like it's, creatives are very anti against what, very anti this merger. And yeah, it's not, I don't know, it's like there's some promising things about the lawsuits, but you only could hold your breath.
Exactly. Yeah. Kind of just skimming through this op-ed too. It definitely more falls on the corporation side, even though towards the second half of it there is a part where he talks about the film stuff, which obviously this has been talked about on the news, just the expectations of theatrical releases and how there is an emphasis on it, even though Paramount's theatrical slate is not great, and even their streaming output isn't all that great because no one cares about Paramount Plus, for example. So yeah, I don't know. It just seems it seems like what David Ellison wrote is sincere enough, but also it's more just a lot of deflection in terms of what's being put out in the news and all that. So I don't know. It seems like a lot of just I wouldn't. I'm trying to think of how to describe this because I didn't read this fully in depth, but it seems like a lot of deflection almost is how
Mm-hmm.
I sort of am gauging from this. Kind of like, oh, it's actually not this. It's more about this, but I can't dive into too many details, which obviously, yeah, there's probably some stipulations, but still, you're the one in charge. So who else are we going to hear this from? So,
Yeah. And, I mean, it's very ballsy to sort of take, put in an op ed to like, probably one of the biggest newspapers on the planet. And, I wouldn't say everybody reads the New York Times. I mean, there's obvious, there's people that don't necessarily love it, but, I think by putting something in that paper and just trying to sort of feel like you're sort of doubling down on the decision, which of course it's not much of a surprise, but I feels like it gives little justification for this deal. And like yeah, there is a concern about like the CNN CBS combination, and I think he is wanting to like sort of ease those concerns, but it's hard to really trust somebody sometimes, especially corporate executives.
oh yeah,
So like you're sort of at a point where it's like you gotta, whatever you say, it's like nobody's gonna necessarily believe you. There's definitely a corporatized thing to it, and I don't know. It's you only could hold your breath. Like I said, you only could hold your breath with this deal and just hope like, it doesn't fall through. I mean, yeah, it was approved by the courts, but, those lawsuits, do give some pretty promising updates, but you gotta like really, you gotta really like hold your breath. So
Yeah, pretty much. I did find this one little sentence a bit funny. So he was talking about the proposed output for films, and yeah, he said, "I have learned better than to promise hits in my own career. G.I. Joe Retaliation met financial expectations. Top Gun Maverick exceeded them, and Terminator Dark Fate fell short." Now, obviously, for the latter two, I can understand. Terminator Dark Fate was a financial disappointment. Top Gun Maverick, I assume they knew that was going to be a hit, but not a $1.4 billion hit.
mhm.
But why G.I. Joe Retaliation of all movies would you reference as an example? Because number one, that movie is absolute trash. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's literally one of the worst
Vaguely.
Hollywood action movies to come out of the last millennium.
Yeah.
But that was the only one that met your financial expectations that you felt need to address in the op-ed. I don't know. I just found that very humorous. Like, why that movie?
Yeah, it is weird. Like I read it, and it's like G.I. Joe. Like you couldn't have mentioned like either like of the Scream films or even like the recent
Transformers.
Transformers. Yeah, like Transformers
That,
like definitely met
that was Paramount.
expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that met up expectations. Or like what Scary Movie 6? Like didn't that reach expectations? I don't know, but
Not sure, honestly.
yeah, I didn't see it. I don't want to.
Or any Mission Impossible
Oh
movie
yeah,
post 2012.
yeah. Like really, any Tom
Well,
Cruise
I guess the
vehicle.
last one underperformed.
Yeah,
So
last one did, but I mean, sort of the last two did, but I don't know. I think they still
true.
like were pretty successful, all things considered. Um, but I feel like GI Joe Retaliations, like it's such an odd example to use.
It is.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, I think there's just a lot of iffiness there, and I think it is interesting to sort of like see the tide sort of seem like it's turning, but obviously, like I said, you can't really hold your breath, especially with what's going on right now in this system. Um, and like it's something where it's like you got you gotta wait longer. I mean, good thing is the merger is happening much later than expected, especially with these lawsuits. And so the fact that like the judge overseeing the case was like nice enough to say like yeah you could push it to March. It's gonna you know it's like gonna make Paramount or break Paramount just because like the amount of money they have to you know pay each day once September rolls around to Warner Brothers and their shareholders. Like they might not, if they lose, they might not even have any money left.
I don't think
That's
so. Yeah.
yeah, like it is. I mean, this merger like costed a lot. Like one over $100 billion is nothing to sneeze at. And so it's like this delay is definitely making it seem like Paramount's just desperate and just
Yeah.
grasping for straws right now. Like they can't
And
even do it. So
yeah. And I'm sorry, David, but I don't think your upcoming film, Ebenezer, directed by Ty West, will bring in enough money to save your studios. So I wouldn't hold my breath on their upcoming slate being able to bail them out of any potential bankruptcy or crippling debt.
yeah, I mean it's clear they want the catalog from Warner Brothers. I mean, it is an iconic catalog, but
Mm-hmm.
I
I
don't
mean,
know. I mean, I
Paramount
feel
has a lucrative history too,
yeah. I mean,
going all the way back to the golden age, but it's just recently they just haven't been that hot.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just Hollywood executives sort of tripping over their shoelaces right now. I mean, everybody wants to be at a point where, they're like Disney, where like they can have box office bombs and still somehow manage to get by. But, you know, it's like not everybody can be that way. So,
Yeah, it's funny. Disney's box office bombs are still like way more than what many of the Hollywood studios could dream to gross. Moana, for example, that's obviously a box office bomb. It still made $264 million worldwide. That's still decent in the grand scheme of things.
And what the
So
fact that Josh DeMero should have like wiped it off, like dirt off his shoulder, like, oh yeah, we have other avenues and film franchises will make money from, which, you know, he's not wrong.
Yeah,
Like,
he's not wrong for sure. So,
yeah, I mean, it's
but that's
like,
not a good attitude to have to
oh
make a
yeah,
movie.
definitely not. I mean, I think
Make
it's
it
like,
for
yeah, Toy
good
Story
artistic
5.
purposes.
Yeah, it's like with Toy Story 5 where, you know, they grossed, you know, it's already grossed over $1 billion. So pretty much half, you know, already more than what Moana has made so far at the box office. So it's like you're sort of at a point where, you know, where it's like, yeah, you're just simply too big to fail. You know, one shit thing's not gonna like impact how everything else is gonna go for the year. We need 2023 back. That's when it felt like Disney came back to Earth and was
You
like,
think so in 2023?
oh yeah, like yeah, when all their films underperformed at the box office, like they performed
Oh,
so below.
underperformed.
Yeah, like
Oh, sorry.
yeah, like you know, where everything underperformed, like Ant-Man Quantumania underperformed, and the Marvels underperformed, and Wish like bombed horribly, and the live action Little Mermaid didn't do hot either, and Indiana Jones 5 just barely scraped by. I mean, you know, how many that successes from that year. And, you know, we thought it was a come down to earth moment, but it wasn't. It was, they were simply just wiped it off and then released Moana 2, and then, like, all of a sudden they made $1 billion again. It's, I don't know. Hollywood's weird.
Yeah.
But I guess time to talk about Spider-Man. New movie came out. Spider-Man Brand New Day. I guess, I know we were sort of talking earlier, like, do we think Disney's going to get any money out this? Apparently they do. It's like only 25% of like the merchandising rights and the film success. So they do get some money from it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so technically they still internal Marvel, but you know, Spider-Man's owned by Sony. So it's like it's a very complicated Kramer versus Kramer situation. You know? But yeah, Spider-Man Brand New Day came out, a sequel to Spider-Man No Way Home, which came out, fuck, that was like 4 years ago
5 years ago.
5 years
Coming
ago.
up on 5.
5? Oh, man. That's felt like so long. And yeah, the film is doing successful. Like
Very.
Yeah, very. Like it outgrossed Endgame in its opening weekend. Domestically, it's already hit $1 billion, and you know this is already being crowned as like the most successful weekend in box office history, at least for this year. Because with obviously this film being out and making the money it did, The Odyssey is also still rolling in some bank, and so you're like at a point where it's like, you know, like it's feeling like 2019 in film again, where every film, major blockbuster or every hyped up blockbuster is like making back the budget that is expected. And it was probably one of the most successful weekends in film history, that at least in the modern age, because Toy Story 5 is still in theaters, and that's still making a lot of money, still bringing in the dough. So yeah, like, but yeah, was this worth the 5-year wait? You know, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess like before we get in, you know, what has your experience been with like Spider-Man?
Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, so I have a love for the character, and I'm pretty much essentially, if there's anything Spider-Man related for a film, I'm immediately on board. I grew up watching the Raimi films, and so forth with the other trilogies. And I really like the MCU Spider-Man films, even though I almost sort of consider them a sub series of the character, because they're not, even though they take influence from some comic runs, it's effectively its own MCU thing. So that's why when they change stuff around with like the suit or the powers, I don't really get annoyed or upset, because it's just like, oh, it's in the MCU, so it's kind of its own thing. And for the most part, the films have been pretty good. I like Homecoming a lot. Admittedly, I think Far From Home is one of the most sauceless and boring Spider-Man films. It really has nothing that interesting. It's not a bad film, but it's just so forgettable and mediocre. I haven't seen No Way Home since theaters, and I know now that's become almost a template for nostalgia hatred, at least in the modern age on like film Twitter and stuff. And yeah, I haven't rewatched it since, but in terms of those nostalgia films, it is miles better than some of the recent slop we've been getting. So I'm sorry, I don't care what people say. I'd rather take No Way Home over Deadpool and Wolverine, for example, because at least No Way Home had a story and purpose and intent. But anyway, to get back on track, I was looking forward to Brand New Day because it's Spider-Man and I like Tom Holland, and a lot of it was shrouded in mystery. I tried not to really look much into it because also at this point with the MCU, we're in such a drought for MCU good quality right now, because the last few films have been either aggressively mediocre or just absolute garbage. It's kind of insane. So with all the good press and good reviews, I was actually looking forward to this more than Doomsday. And in a weird way, I will say right off the bat, I enjoy Spider-Man Brand New Day overall. However, in some cases, it is probably the most disappointing Spider-Man film, which is weird to say because I think there's some elements of the film that are excellent. I think the perspective that shows for Peter Parker dealing with the loneliness following the events of No Way Home, how he's essentially starting fresh, is really, really strong. The film has a decent emotional weight to it as well in terms of exploring that. And it kind of deconstructs the persona and the identity of the superhero and the fact that when you don that persona, everybody knows you. But then at the same time, as soon as you take off the mask, nobody knows you. And that's a really interesting contrast. And they explore it rather well. And also the action is pretty good too. This is the most memorable MCU action we've had in a while, just because of the sort of the camera angles they were able to get with the action, the choreography. It was directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, who did Shang-Chi. And while Shang-Chi is not a masterpiece, one of the best things about that is the choreography, heavily influenced by Kung Fu flicks. And you almost see that in Spider-Man Brand New Day. And it never occurred to me that Spider-Man as a character is very much a parallel to a Hong Kong action film in terms of using the environment, being very fast and quick too. It's almost a dance, and you see that influence in Brand New Day. So all that is fine. However, most of the stuff that I want to get into in terms of the problems have to deal with spoilers. I'm not going to spoil it right off the bat, but I will say there are certain elements, particularly plot points, that, in my opinion, have zero place in a Spider-Man movie. And at some points, it made me completely forget that I was watching a Spider-Man movie, and it ultimately kind of ruined the experience for me. And it's disappointing to say that because it was riding a really good high, and then something happens in the second half, and it literally goes completely off the rails, and I didn't like where it ended. So essentially, that's where I'm at right now. It has really excellent moments and really just messy and sloppy moments that make me think we needed to do a second draft on this. And honestly, at this point, maybe if Doomsday doesn't work out, the MCU just needs to do a hard reset, because I don't think it can continue like this. So that's my summation in a nutshell.
Very interesting summation. And oddly enough, I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do think I like this film slightly more, but only slightly. So I guess, like, sort of give my history with the Spider-Man character. I grew up reading the comics a lot. I think there is a way to, like, there is such a charm to them. And, like, a relatability, because, initially when Stan Lee came up with the character, like, there was so much, like, backlash from Marvel executives at the time about like, oh, nobody's gonna believe that a teenager can be a superhero. Like, only
Hmm.
teenagers should be sidekicks. And then
Sidekicks.
obviously, like both him and Jack Kirby proved everybody wrong. When issue 15 released, and like, everybody just fell in love with Spider-Man. I mean, he's practically become a symbol, just for a lot of people. And I remember when like the Raimi films came out, like those were awesome. Even as flawed as they are, like there still is like a level of stylish creativity with them. And you could tell like Raimi's like directorial style really shines through. It's not very much of like how what it looks like. It's more like how it's shot, and just sort of like makes it all work. Like the filmmaking intrigues you. And then like, the web films with Andrew Garfield came out. And, those definitely are hit or miss. I mean, I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 definitely like bit off a little more than it could chew.
Dumpster
And
fire.
yeah, and like completely failed. But there was still like some things to appreciate about it, even if it just, you know, couldn't necessarily hit the ground running the way it wanted to. And then like, Tom Holland's Spider-Man like pops up, where, makes a very promising entrance with Marvel Civil War, then his own solo film in Spider-Man Homecoming, where, that's like a nice sort of small slice of life sort of story where, it kind of feels like you're watching, those old like 80s films, but sort of taking place in the 2000s in some respects. Where, that's sort of like where we wanted to see Spider-Man not go too big, but just sort of like a smaller scale story that sort of fit the character pretty well, especially at this point in the MCU. And then, Far From Home happened, and, that was a little bigger, but, oddly enough, I don't remember too much about it. I just
Yeah.
remember being a little bit predictable, but it still had some charming moments. And then No Way Home came out, and for a while that's like probably that's still like the best out of the whole Holland saga, just because that one clearly like felt like it was coming off a comic book, even with like the old nostalgia baited stuff, and it like still, I think it still was a pretty effective. I don't know if I was, I remember I put out like my number 4 film of that year, but I don't know if it's that high anymore, oddly enough. Admittedly, it's been a while since I've seen it, but it hasn't resonated with me that much since. And that's just because of Spider-Verse. Like, first
Hmm.
Spider-Verse came out, I'm like, that was so hard to top. And then the second one comes out, and now that one's hard to top. It's like, that's been the more interesting thing with Spider-Man, has been those films compared to the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, which isn't to say like Tom Holland is bad at Spider-Man. I mean, I think he embraces the, young Peter Parker wholeheartedly, and, he still has that sense of humor we still associate with the character. But like, obviously, like at this point, it's like, this version of Spider-Man is just a Spider-Man within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which, let's face it, is very restrictive in terms of stylization, and narrative voice. And so, like, you can't really see the level of creativity that you like see from the Raimi trilogy or even the web films. I mean, and definitely not from the Spider-Verse films. It's like we're sort of at a point where it's like, the Holland Spider-Man, even with the films being of good quality, aren't necessarily, you know, quite as like narratively striking as the others. Which sucks because I think there's still elements in them that work very well. But I guess it kind of got me curious about what they were going to do with this film. It kind of seemed like they were going to take things a little bit more seriously, which I think is welcomed. I mean, for those who don't know, this film sort of starts off right where the last film left off. Not necessarily, but it's kind of like 5 years after the events in No Way Home, where inevitably Peter Parker had to like erase everybody's memory, or else like the whole multiverse would collapse or something. Um, but yeah, it was a thing where so everybody's memory is erased. And so pretty much Peter Parker is just Spider-Man at this point. Like he doesn't have much of an identity. Nobody really knows who he is. And he's sort of grappling with that effect because everybody that knew him doesn't know him anymore. And so he doesn't know who he is outside of being Spider-Man, which honestly is a very interesting dilemma for a character to have. But the thing I kind of realized as like the film goes along is like it kind like this narrative surprises don't feel that surprising. And I know we'll get into it, but I was like, I could really predict like what was going to happen, which isn't necessarily on Destin Daniel Cretton, because I think he does sort of bring a style that is very much needed for the MCU Spider-Man, because the John Watts films, even as well done as they are, sort of felt a little bit generic in some cases. But this one I could at least say it's trying to implement a style that does sort of try to emulate what's going on in Spider-Verse, where it kind of feel like you would see these images in a comic book somewhere, which we saw in the marketing. So I think the direction works, and the acting and the performances and the action work, but after a while, like the story gets so long in the tooth, and it tries to sort of do a little bit too much of what it's given. And honestly, I couldn't necessarily get that engaged, because it's half the time it's like, I'm liking what's going on, but I'm not sure what it's trying to build up to here. Because at least with the others, I could predict what was going to happen. I wouldn't say predict, but I could at least say there was a narrative flow where I sort of felt things happened naturally in terms of the story. Here, it's like it's trying to surprise you in a case, but it's not necessarily leading to anything that interesting, or albeit that surprising. Like I could really predict what was going to happen, oddly enough, and it's like hearing people react and feel like, oh, that's gonna, oh my god, that happened. It's like, yeah, it did. Why are you so shocked by this? But I don't know. I think it works, but I don't think it's the masterpiece that people say it is. I don't know. It's just one of those films where it's like I leave scratching my head sometimes about what people are sort of seeing in this. So
I think for the people that say this film is a masterpiece, one thing that we didn't address is the fact that I think the bar for superhero films is so low now, oddly enough, even though they're not necessarily terrible, but it's just because they're so cinematic universe heavy that like you need a freaking degree at this point to get into the MCU. Like you can't start from the MCU from scratch now. I think it's almost impossible. So the fact that Spider-Man Brand New Day has a fairly coherent story, even though I know it's complaining about how it's kind of messy, but admittedly you could probably watch this one on its own and go through it fine. But that's the bare minimum for what we should expect for a film narrative. It's kind of like how people were raving about treating as if Superman was the return of something that we hadn't seen in decades. And it's like, this is the bare minimum for superhero storytelling. And it just goes to show that we've lost the plot so hard at points. I think that's why people are really raving about this. And like I said, it's still entertaining and fun, but this is not Spider-Man 2 Raimi level storytelling. This is not it's not Across the Spider-Verse in terms of the intricacies. It's good. And what I like about the first half is that it really is just about Peter doing his own thing. And one thing about the MCU Spider-Man that I've come to expect, but I'm also kind of annoyed, is the fact that it never seemed like Spider-Man was able to do something on his own, he always needed the aid of another Marvel hero, because in the first film, Homecoming, it was really about his relationship with Tony Stark, which I can accept to a degree, because by that point in the timeline, they were building him up as his Spider-Man up as basically Tony Stark's protege. Far From Home, I don't remember much, but I just remember Nick Fury was in it a lot, trying to get him to join S.H.I.E.L.D. And then No Way Home had Doctor Strange, which admittedly that makes sense, because how do you get the multiverse involved without some, magic sorcery? Spider-Man can't do that. Okay, so fair. This film also does a similar thing with two specific characters, which I believe was in the marketing. So I guess minor spoiler before we go into the major ones. The Hulk is in this film. Bruce Banner, which admittedly is more just like, oh, he needs some advice. So he breaks into the college basically. He's like, hey, Dr. Banner, tell me about the inhibitor things. How do you keep your rage levels low? Because we also should mention that one thing that Spider-Man has to deal with is how his powers, his arachnid hormones basically are overtaking his human hormones. So he's developing more of the spider sense.
So he puberty.
Goes to pretty much, and also has organic web shooters, a la an homage to the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, how he didn't even have to build the tech. It was just in him all along after the spider bite. So there's that. And then he also teams up with the Punisher, John Bernthal's character, which admittedly I never saw the Netflix Daredevil series. So this is a new connection where they're trying to bring that universe back into the MCU, and he's sort of fighting alongside him. And even though for the most part, Spider-Man in the first half is really more exploring his own personal struggles and identities, it almost kind of weakens the character in the fact that he always has to fight alongside another Marvel hero. Like, the whole thing about Spider-Man is the individuality, and the fact that what part of his struggle is the fact that he has to juggle all these responsibilities. And sometimes he has so much on his plate that it causes him to be impulsive and can lead down a more detrimental path. And the flawed nature of Spider-Man is what I find very relatable, and also what makes him a unique hero. He's not perfect, and the films or the comics never portray him as perfect. And not to say he's a villain, but the flaws bring out a lot of human qualities. And here it really just seems like, oh, if he struggles, then another Marvel hero can come essentially pick up the slack in case he's struggling too much. And I don't know, for me, it sort of weakens the character, but we've come to expect that from this point with the MCU Spider-Man. But I guess I'll let you say something about that. But I just wanted to ask, after that, should we just go into spoilers? Because there's really, I don't know how much I can dance around it. I think we need to do spoilers.
Yeah, I think
soon.
Spoilers. So. I mean, I guess if you're skipping to the next time code, keep in mind we like the film. All right. I just think we have a very interesting relationship with it.
We're more lukewarm, I think, but we lean towards liking is how it sounds.
Pretty much like a Thunderbolts feeling. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, that's a good comparison, actually.
Yeah, so if you don't want spoilers, you could skip to the next time code. Otherwise, we'll be jumping right in. Okay, let me preface. I was not at all shocked by the Jean Grey twist. And keep in mind I wasn't on social media when this film came out, because I don't want to be, because you get those dumbasses that are just like, oh yeah, it's Jean Grey, and running it all for the people who actually want to go out and see the movie and experience that twist themselves. But for me, it's I've already seen, read the comics enough. And I mean, I've read a lot of X-Men, I even watched the animated show, even the new one, holy shit, the new one's really good. X-Men 97, definitely worth a watch. But I wasn't that much surprised about that Sadie Sink was going to be Jean Grey. That was such an easy twist. And what's funny is that when they reveal it, it kind of feels like glanced over oddly enough, because the way they sort of portray it, it's oh yeah, it's Jean Grey, and it's okay, it's Jean Grey. What about it? And because I know it's it's a big deal having the X-Men in this universe. I mean, I love the X-Men, but it's like they could have like built it up a little more or something, or maybe like made it more shocking because like for some reason the way they like sort of portrayed that like whole twist just like did not work for me at all. And then it just kind of hits to like very dumb twists and turns, like the VMAX thing just being a ventilation shaft. And
Yeah.
it's like, what are we doing? I mean, and that's kind of where I felt like the film was sort of biting off more than it could chew. And then I sort of like realized it's having a pretty predictable plot along with it. So you're including these characters, but it's like it doesn't feel that cohesive to it. I mean, I think the one character inclusion that I actually welcome a lot was the Punisher, oddly enough, because
Yeah, he was good.
yeah, it was very good. I mean, John Bernthal and Tom Holland actually have some pretty great chemistry. I think whenever they both were on screen together, like, yeah, I was actually pretty engaged in that conversation. It didn't feel like, the annoying, like, buddy cop conversations you would see from like Rush Hour or whatever, where, after a while those things get grating. But here it's like, oh, like they actually have legit good chemistry with one another. And, it also helps that, they were Holland and Bernthal were in, the Odyssey together early this year. And so they already have a pretty strong relationship. But yeah, it works pretty effectively. I honestly think. But I guess like, I think it's just like, everybody outside Spider-Man just really isn't that interesting. Like, Jean Grey, like they do try to give like the backstory and, her whole conflict with this damage control center run by Milchek from Severance. But I mean,
He was good in the movie. I liked him.
Oh yeah, he's a great actor. I really enjoy him. What's the guy's name again? I know why I'm blanking.
Tramell
Tillman, yeah, like really good actor. Definitely a big future ahead. And watch Severance too. That's fucking great. But even with like the additional backstory, Sadie Sink, putting in a pretty solid performance, all things considered. It's just sort of like I just sort of stopped caring after a while, It's like, because every character outside Spider-Man doesn't feel like they're dealing with a dilemma that, on paper I should be caring about, but I just don't. I mean, I care about his MJ dilemma, and there was a pretty effective twist and like sort of, I guess they sort of do like a whole Guardians 3 thing where it's like, yeah, I'm the version of MJ that you never fell in love with or whatever. Like, somebody who doesn't have any memories of Peter. And that honestly, it is a little heartbreaking when you see that happen. And, there is actually sort of a nice little scene with Spider-Man and like Ned and MJ just sort of like chilling in the apartment, building Legos, like before the climactic scene rolls in. It's like, oh, okay, like this actually works. Like this is actually a good moment of just chemistry between the three actors that, work so well in the first 3 films. So, like that stuff's solid. But it's like the main plot just doesn't really grip me that well. It's like it's just doesn't flow the way it should, even if like the direction and the presentation and the action sort of trying to like tell me I should. It's the story is just so flawed.
Okay, but before we get into the Jean Grey stuff, there's one positive that I want to say. Well, 2. The first is actually the production design, because one thing that is interesting about the film is that it actually wasn't shot in New York. It was shot primarily in Glasgow, Scotland, of all places, and they shot in England on sound stages. Yeah, and what I found interesting about the film is that it is very obviously not New York. It looks like a backlot, but almost in a good way, where the artifice of it is like it's trying to capture the design of a comic book, but not the stylization. So I kind of liked how weirdly, I liked how artificial the set design looked because it almost had this otherworldly nature to it. Like comic books are set in our reality, but at the end of the day, they're still incredible fantasies. And this film almost evoked that, which wasn't really captured in the other films. The like I mentioned, the action sequences are not only good, but also some of the swinging sequences where he's swinging through the city. Some of the CGI looks really rough at points, but they sometimes mimic the style of some of the famous Spider-Man comic covers in the opening montage, which I really appreciated. And the emotional stuff with Peter, that whole arc with him and MJ is, in my opinion, one of the strongest elements of the film because kind of like what you were saying, the fact that the MJ of this, I guess, timeline doesn't remember and is well aware that it's like, yeah, I can't be a stand-in. I can't be a replacement, essentially, which, and the way Zendaya delivers the line, essentially saying straight to Peter's face, like, yeah, I don't love you, basically. It's very heartbreaking, actually. And I was really surprised, like, wow, the resonance of that moment works and just how everything that Peter essentially was like trying to get out of for the past who knows how many years just crumbles in an instant. Like that's almost this reality check almost. And that pathos was surprisingly really strong, is the most I emotionally cared about something in an MCU film in I don't even know how many years. So little moments like that in this film are just make me wish I liked it more because you can sense it's working in those departments, but it really falls apart with the structure. The structure of this movie is it's almost like two different scripts that they mash together, and it really all falls apart with the Jean Grey stuff. Because my dilemma with the film is that I think individually on its own, the Jean Grey plotline is not terrible, even though at the end of the day, it seems like this is the MCU's answer to Stranger Things. Ironic that they also have Sadie Sink in the film too, which she's a good Jean Grey, and I really like her as an actress.
Oh, yeah,
and the fact that she's able to bring this character to life in this way has promise. But it should not have been in a Spider-Man film, and that is the biggest flaw because the X-Men is arguably the most popular Marvel property since or next to Spider-Man. So why are we combining these two here? Because there's entire sequences in the film where Spider-Man is straight up not in the movie, and it's all focused on Jean Grey. And when I pay to see a movie called Spider-Man Brand New Day, I want to see Spider-Man. Like, if you wanted to sell me an X-Men or a Jean Grey origin story, put that in an X-Men film. And which maybe it would have been fine if the buildup that it had emotionally meant it was going to be something very unique or interesting, but the whole message was just like, oh no, you're really not that bad, actually. There's actually some good in you. And it's like, really? You dedicated all that screen time for that type of message, which we've seen God knows how many times. It's so contrived and boring. And this is not a children's film. This is a PG-13 Marvel film. And the level of nuance is remarkably low. And overall, it's just incredibly disappointing that so much of the film was dedicated to something that was so like lame, honestly. And for most of the second act or the second half, I was just really not invested because it's not focused on Spider-Man and his dilemmas. And like I said earlier about how the MCU Spider-Man for some reason doesn't seem confident that Spider-Man can carry a film on his own is more evident here than any other film because, first of all, the fact that Marvel for some reason still doesn't believe that Spider-Man can carry a film on his own when this is the fourth movie and it grossed almost $1 billion in its first weekend says that Spider-Man can carry a film on its own. We didn't know who Sadie Sink was going to play up until the film came out. And I don't know, it's kind of irksome because what it did with Spider-Man individually in the film was the better part of the movie. You didn't need to have the Jean Grey stuff in there. And the way it sort of clashed together felt like it was really forced. And apparently Destin Daniel Cretton said that he wanted to put Jean Grey in the film. It wasn't from the studio, but I honestly don't believe that because it seems like two different scripts that they just mashed together and just hoped that it would work because the buildup to it isn't strong really because it's so hyper focused on Peter Parker. And then immediately once the the mysterious entity comes in, the entire plot shifts, and everything else that's established before gets abandoned. And then by the end of the day, they both go on their separate paths regardless. So I'm just thinking, why didn't you save the Jean Grey stuff for another movie? Like, why'd you do it here? I don't understand from a narrative storytelling perspective why you would make a decision like that. And so that was the only thing that was going through my head throughout the entire second act is like, why are we doing this in a Spider-Man film? This does not belong here.
Yeah, and to be honest, like I do think that there's are elements of it that work. But I think with the fact that, you know, they are trying to find a way to like keep this character a mystery in some cases, really does go against the film. And, you know, not necessarily saying like, you know, Sadie Sink's doing a bad job or, you know,
No, she's not.
yeah, or the plot line's not doing bad either. Like, I think it can work, but I feel like it's like I said, it's the cohesion that just doesn't. And I guess like going back to sort of your argument about like, you know, Spider-Man, you know, Marvel, you know, sort of putting a ball and chain on Spider-Man, not thinking he can, you know, do a film on his own. It's like, I think the closest we got was No Way Home, oddly enough. Because when you think about it, outside of, you know, the other two Peters coming in, you know, in the climax, it's like of that film, most of the time he's dealing with this like shit on his own. Like he's dealing with these villains from different universes and sort of, you know, Doctor Strange's like, you know, bullshit in some cases. Like, you know, and, you know, sort of dealing with like the personal strife and struggle of like losing Aunt May and, you know, stuff like that. Like there is something there that like worked in just sort of letting Tom Holland's performance carry the film. Because I mean, yeah, you could say it's like, oh yes, nostalgia bait because they're grabbing, all these actors who played these characters in other iterations of Spider-Man in this film, like just so that way people can come to the theater. Like, yeah, you could say that, but I still think it like was effective in some respects, even if like, yeah, it did feel that pandering in some cases. But, I could at least say like, there was some level of a story here that, Peter's sort of griping with, like the thing about being a celebrity or, people knowing who he is outside of being Spider-Man the same way like Tony Stark dealing with it in Iron Man 2. It's like there is a lot of interesting dilemmas that, would actually be nerve-wracking if you're like just graduating high school and just like, like, oh shit, like, nobody's gonna give me room. They know who I am, they know where I live. It's like, yeah, it's like it is a very but interesting dilemma that we saw him get through in that film. And here, like, there is an interesting dilemma here. And, like I said, I mean, that's like the best part of the film is just how he's sort of dealing with it. I mean, even the inclusion of the Punisher actually makes a lot of sense for this type of story because, like if anybody knows that character and, like, or has watched a show, like the Punisher has like some pretty heavy shit that he deals with. It's like he's not a character that, more or less like anti-hero, but he does like some pretty, violent and egregious things that obviously like they had to, pull back on in this one, just because like, they don't want to upset the kids in the audience or whatever. But so like this story works. And I don't mind like the inclusion of having the Hulk in here as either, but I guess like it just needed to mesh and mix better. Like that's just the thing about it. It's like, you want to have these types of stories in here, but you just gotta find a way to like, make it feel cohesive. I mean, if it has many characters as No Way Home had, at least there was a cohesion with it. Like it kind of felt very much so, even like what they include like 6 villains in it. So essentially being the Sinister Six in some respects. Like they're all each sort of going through their own sort of arcs, even if like the characters are not on screen that much. Like I could at least say they're trying to get them through it. But here it's just like, they're all going for arcs, but it's just like, I mean, they're all going for arcs, but it feels messy. It just, I feel like there needed to be a way they could sort of polish the script a little better. Because, I think Jean Grey could work in this story, and I think there's elements of it that do work. But I just kind of wish that they sort of like meshed that in with Peter's struggle with identity in some cases, and it just kind of felt like, a little shoved in. So
yeah, I think that's where we sort of disagree, is the fact that I just don't think the Jean Grey stuff fits in here at all. And to go back to No Way Home, at least even though that film had so much nostalgia and had so many villains and so many characters, you never once confused it for anything other than a Spider-Man movie. They were all Spider-Man villains. They had multiple Spider-Men from multiverses. It's not like, besides Doctor Strange, it's not like, I don't know, freaking Nightcrawler from the Fox movies merged in and it turned into an X-Men movie. It's just, when the whole stuff with the whole thing about X-Men too, it also grapples with individuality and also the identity, but that's more dealing with a metaphor regarding prejudice and class, which really Spider-Man doesn't really have. So I can maybe understand why you would try to fit like square peg round hole into a Spider-Man film, but why even do it at all? Because there's enough material there to put that in an X-Men film. I'm not saying we need a Jean Grey origin story movie instead, because I honestly don't think there's enough material for that. But Spider-Man on his own has so much you can do. And there was this story with just Peter Parker had enough potential. The film is already nearly 2.5 hours long. So why did you need an extra 20 minutes? And I fundamentally do not understand, because also a friend of mine mentioned this too, is the fact that there is another Spider-Man villain known as Mr. Negative, who effectively has similar powers to Jean Grey. So why not just do that? And then maybe from there sort of have, with the mind control, maybe if you want to tease it in a post-credit scene, kind of like what they were doing with Thanos back in phase 1 or 2 or whatever it was, and then signal that to be like, oh, the X-Men are going to come. That's fine. That I don't care, but just having the entire second act be essentially a pseudo X-Men movie doesn't work. And I know people like to make the Civil War comparison, because Captain America Civil War is effectively more an Avengers movie, but at least it was better than the Avengers sequel. So I don't really care at this point. Like, this one is more, and that one fit because at that point we had S.H.I.E.L.D. We had all the converging storylines. So I understand why you put here. We're trying to start it off, and it almost, not to say that it's as bad, because the one I'm going to compare it to is of way less quality, but it's almost comparable to, weirdly enough, the Snyderverse, how they started off with the Batman versus Superman films as like the second movie and not having this build up. It's just, I don't know. It seems like they're just trying to put it in too soon. And rather than spending time building up, they just want to rush into be like, oh, we got to get the X-Men in somewhere. What's our next film on the lineup? Okay, Spider-Man, just put it in there, make it fit. Who cares? It's like, I don't know. It's so messy as a structure. And I don't like that.
It is. I mean, honestly, like, kudos to your friend for mentioning Mr. Negative. Like, that is an awesome character. I mean, if you ever played have you played the Spider-Man PS4 games at all, or?
Very briefly. I definitely didn't finish it.
Yeah. But yeah, Mr. Negative's like the main baddie, at least for like the first half of that game. But yeah, like that. Yeah, that would have been awesome. I wouldn't mind having Mr. Negative in this film. But I guess they wanted to grab somebody that had like some more star power. But I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, they could have gone Spider-Man, with that choice.
Yeah. That's everything goes back to it's Spider-Man. He sells enough tickets on his own. Marvel should know this by now.
Yeah, it's like, the reason, we were sort of talking about it earlier, like I think it was in the last episode, that, regardless of where the MCU is right now, and like the reason like all these films are like failing, it's just because a lack of like characters nobody cares about. People give a shit about Spider-Man. I mean, everybody will go after like a Spider-Man film. I mean, even if it's like not the greatest thing, like Spider-Man 3 or Amazing Spider-Man 2, like you could at least say it's like it's gonna be successful. Like people are gonna go see it, regardless of what the quality is, because people love Spider-Man. It's like Batman. Like everybody will go out to see a Batman movie now.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, there could have just been a way to make it work better. I think there's still effective moments here, and especially with like some of the action, I think is pretty well done. I think like the scene where they're chasing the tank through the city is pretty fun. I really enjoyed that. I mean, you could tell like they're having a lot of fun with like the camera tricks and the movements. Like there is some very nice framing here, especially like there's like a neat vertigo effect where you see Peter sort of hanging from like the top of like a fire escape with being shrouded in a web. Like that is pretty fun. Like
Mhm.
there's a like there is certainly a style here that Daniel Cretton is trying to implement, that we haven't really seen shot this way. I mean, I think the shot that does stand out a lot, it's like when Spider-Man's upside down looking at his phone and then he like jumps. Like yeah, that's there are like some pretty incredible shots here, and that are creative and inventive, especially for a Spider-Man film. So I think the directing, I think, definitely helps a lot.
Mhm.
Um, so just the script could have been better. I think could have been better ironed out at the end of the day. And I guess I got only enough. This is probably the best, like in terms of CGI we've seen in a while, but there's still moments that look a little odd. Like, I mean, we're already in spoilers, but it's when Peter's going to meet Yelena, the new Black Widow, essentially, in the
Oh,
pool
oh, the
room
mask, yeah.
in the mask, which honestly, it's not a bad idea. I mean, I think it's a nice comical choice to use. I mean, there's been many iterations. I mean, even like the video games have a version of like where Spider-Man's wearing nothing but his mask and it's just in his underwear for half the time, sort of like paying homage to like the moments of when Spider-Man's like trying to get back to the apartment and and they stole his clothes. Like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a nice touch. But there are points where the mask just like I'm not gonna say they didn't wear where Tom Holland didn't wear the mask on set. I'm pretty certain he did, but it feels a little bit too overly digitized
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
that sequence because I mean it was like a moment where and it was like the moment where he's talking like he's meeting with Milchek. I know he doesn't have a name. I know he has a name in the movie, but I know him as Milchek because it's Tramel Tillman's known as in Severance. But he's being with Tramel Tillman's character and in his office, and there's like I want to say that he's in the room, but it for some reason it just feels like they would use like a CGI stand-in or something. And I get it.
Wouldn't
It's like
surprise me.
it's like it's tough to like get the eyes. Um, But I don't know. It's like you can watch like the past iterations of like the Holland Spider-Man, and like I think like the scene I think back to is when in Infinity War when they're at a standoff with Star Wars, then you sort of see the eyes moving up and down as like Chris Pratt's arm is around Tom Holland's neck, and it's like I mean I didn't have trouble believing that character was in that room. Like I had zero difficulty, even with them being in a very CGI landscape. But for some reason, it's like there are moments where like the CGI, like they're putting models in places where they shouldn't be. It's like, I mean, it kind of felt like they're either like over digitizing the suit in some scenes where it didn't need to be that digitized, or they're just like having Tom Holland take a copy break while the CGI double does this thing. It's very weird.
I will say I love the suit. I think the suit is awesome that we
Yeah,
have a
same.
fairly accurate MCU Spider-Man suit. Because I didn't mind the Stark influence suit, but also it's for me. I don't think Spider-Man should be wearing armor. I want to see him in a latex costume swinging around New York. So that looked good. I really like in some of the fight sequences. There's moments where the camera sort of shifts with Spider-Man, almost as if you're playing a video game on an inverted stage where the camera shifts, so the character is in the same position, but everything else is oriented differently. That's really clever. And also the fact that we see Tom Holland's or Peter Parker's eyes through the suit, I thought was really neat. There's some really cool angles that they get there. So from a presentation standpoint, not to say that this is the best CGI ever, because like we mentioned, it's still a little rough. It's nice that there's a style because not to say John Watts was a bad filmmaker, but he just had no style as a director.
Yeah,
And in hindsight, it's just very much just, oh, get the shot, have it in focus, have the color grading be okay, and that's good enough. It's like that. There was not a lot of personality to the look of those films, unlike the Raimi movies, for example. So to see Destin Daniel Cretton bring that to this movie elevated it a lot to some degree. And honestly, when talking about the film more and more, I'm oddly reminded of The Dark Knight Rises in some way. And it's been a long time since I've seen The Dark Knight Rises, but that film also has kind of a messy storyline with a lot of characters, but you can almost sense that there's a solid hour and a half movie that is borderline excellent, just trying to squeeze its way throughout some of the film. And that's how I feel a lot about Brand New Day, is that there is objectively a solid hour of great material here that works great on its own, but also could be expanded with that sense of focus. But then there's so much stuff that weighs it down a lot and just comes off as really messy. And I don't know, like it was just, it felt like first draft material, which is interesting because the script, it was written by really Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, who worked on a lot of the other Spider-Man films, but apparently Justin Kuritzky's, who wrote Challengers and Queer, did some uncredited rewrites on this film. And I think he injected a lot more of the personal stuff with Peter Parker and adding that sense of emotional pathos, because we just don't see that in not only a lot of the other Spider-Man films, but really any MCU film. Like, this is the most I've cared about some characters in some cases. And then you have the opposite where I'm just bored out of my skull and just not invested in the slightest. So that's why it's very bizarre how much emotionally I like ebb and flow through this movie. And even thinking about it still overall, it's like, I want to give it, a part of me wants to say, like, is this movie worse than I remember? It's like, or is it better than I remember? I honestly don't know. It's like really, really strange. I haven't had that happen with a Spider-Man film, honestly, ever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I sort of feel underwhelmed by it because I can't really say it's a bad movie.
No, neither do I.
Yeah, I think it's pretty far from it. I mean, because like even if it gets to like the lows of like, I wouldn't say it gets to the lows of something like I mean, Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Raimi Spider-Man 3. Yeah, where those films, like, completely, even if they have some qualities in it, like, don't necessarily work in the whole vacuum of things. Or not the whole vacuum. They don't work in the whole scheme of things. But I don't know. I guess like maybe I don't know if the expectations were that high, oddly enough. Because I mean, I know I've been at a point with like the MCU where I just don't care anymore. Like, it's like the reason I saw this is because I like Spider-Man. Like, that's the reason I saw this. Like, I didn't. And the thing is, like, I guess like the thing that is so nice about like the Tom Holland Spider-Man films is that maybe outside of the second one, they do feel a little bit more detached from the overall MCU. I mean, even if they have like characters in there or like events in there that like, are happening, it still feels like its own sort of story at the end of the day. So like I guess like it doesn't like kill the rewatchability of these films. It doesn't, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like I just really don't care about what's happening in the MCU, which I am appreciate that they don't try to build up anything, like with what's going on or what's going to happen with Doomsday. I mean, I guess like there's the little post-credit scene, which who really cares at this point? But like, I could at least say that like it feels detached enough where you could still watch these films on your own and not have to worry about the overall MCU continuity. I guess sort of like, I mean, maybe the Guardians sort of had that element too, even though like Thanos was such a big presence in the first two films, even if he wasn't in them that long. But I don't know. It's like like I said, we're at such a point with the MCU that's like, the reason why this is being successful is because of the character. People love the character. Like nobody is gonna care about Thunderbolts or Fantastic Four right now. I mean, it's unless you're like a really, really die-hard Marvel fan, it's like, and like Doomsday will still be successful because people want to see Doctor Doom on screen. Like that's the nature. But unless like you're a really, really big Marvel fan, like what is getting you hyped for these films right now? Like, I mean, because all that's here is Spider-Man. Like we'll go and see. I mean, and plus this is like a perfectly adequate Spider-Man film, which is funny because it's like I had the same thoughts in this Thunderbolts, where that's a perfectly adequate Marvel film. But this is already like leagues above like Thunderbolts, in my opinion. Although like I do appreciate people that like that film because I understand like the reasoning, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's just getting to the point that the MCU just feels like homework, which is not a good attitude to have with being a film goer. At least with this one, yeah, it's just because people love Spider-Man, people love Tom Holland, people love Zendaya, and I knew that this movie was going to be successful regardless, but did you expect this to be the second highest grossing opening weekend in film history? Because I sure didn't.
I did not.
It made more money in 3 days than the entirety of the Odyssey, and that made a lot of money too.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I guess I just wasn't thinking about that when I was like watching it. It's like, I mean, no, when me and my sister were getting tickets, like, because, we were trying to get it in like a good format. We ended up going to it. It's like, I forgot what it's called. It's like an
Screen X.
It's not Screen X.
I'm just kidding.
I want to see anything in that format again. But it was like something I don't know, DFX, that's the name. And I guess it's like Adobe Theater that is actually like, it's just like, it's in the Colony in Grandscape, just North Dallas. But yeah, we went at like 10:45 at night because almost all like the major showings were like sold out. So it's like, I mean, because I know people were still going bananas for the Odyssey and it's like third weekend, but like they were really going bananas for this one. Like I wasn't expecting this to like make so much money, but then again, I should have known by the time we got our seats, like the whole screening sold out. So, but it is crazy.
I mean, it just goes to show that people love Spider-Man. And I will say this again, even though this has been like the fifth time, Marvel, if you're listening, have Spider-Man just lead a movie on his own. He will sell tickets. This is living proof that you don't need to have other MCU characters interacting with him in the same movie. Just let Spider-Man do his own thing. Have him figure things out on his own. Stop a bad guy on his own. You could have maybe, I don't know, a brief little word of wisdom from, I don't know, he doesn't remember Tony Stark by this point anymore, but I don't know. Just don't have crossover characters. Just, I want to see Spider-Man do his own thing, fighting bad guys, being a young adult in New York, sort of that thing. It will make money. Don't worry, guys. This is proof that it will. So,
yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, if there were like other things, I guess I do sort of like that there were a little bit of Easter eggs in the beginning. Because they sort of go for like a rapid montage, with sort of Spider-Verse style, where you see Spider-Man sort of doing his thing, and
Hmm.
like they're bringing the Tombstone character, which she's only been seen in Spider-Verse. Even like sort of basing some of his design off of that character, and they also like there's all like moments where just like little homages to the Insomniac games, like especially with like the um like the damage control guards coming out with like
Hmm.
a taser stick or whatever, and it's like, oh, like, yeah, it reminds me a lot of like the Insomniac game. So like there are some subtle nods there. They don't feel forced oddly enough. Like, I mean, they could sound forced depending on if you like depending on who's watching it, but I could always say it's like, oh, like there's like some subtle nods there. So I could say like there is a passion there. Like, I could say,
Of course, yeah.
yeah, like even if it's a sloppy story, there is a passion for this character and what he means. And, I guess like the credit sequence is pretty nice too, with you have the
Oh
Steve
yeah.
Lacy song in the background and just slice of life New York. Like it's very nice. Um,
Yeah, there's two random homages or Easter eggs to, for some reason, the two worst Spider-Man films, Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2. There's one moment where this might be a reach, but I know some people online were talking about it, is when Peter or Spider-Man has to grab the inhibitor chip, basically. I think he's when he's fighting the Hulk and it's about to like fall. And it almost parallels the shot in Spider-Man 3 when Peter has to grab the ring when he's
mm,
fighting James Franco. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. And then I don't remember which character said it, so forgive me, but there's a line that someone says where he said he lied to me, and I just immediately thought of Jamie Foxx's Keno performance as Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I was just thinking, okay, whoever
he
was
lied
it,
to me.
Eric
He
Eric
died to
Summers,
me.
Eric Summers, Chris McKenna, or Jetson Kuritzkis, whoever put that in, it's like that had to have been semi-intentional. But I don't know why we're referencing that dumpster fire of a film, but that was funny, at least. So
I know there's people that make fun of the score to Amazing Spider-Man 2 just because like it had 6 people working on it along with Hans Zimmer. But I don't
really,
know. I do like the Electro Suite. I don't know. People make
I
fun
don't
of it a lot
remember.
because like it's just like the odd like techno dialogue in it is crazy, but I don't know. It kind of has a charm to it. But I don't know. Like it's hard. This film's heart's in the right place. It's not.
Yeah, it's not cynical.
Yeah.
It's
It.
just misguided, honestly.
Yeah. Very much so. Yeah. I don't really have many other thoughts. I mean, I guess the score was fine. I mean, I feel like I heard better from Michael Giacchino, but I do like the ambient sort of sound to it. Like it actually works, but I don't know. It didn't really leave much on top of my head. Um,
Yeah, Giacchino is a great composer, but I gotta say his work on, besides the main Spider-Man theme that he composed, his his scores for all these films have been rather bland and forgettable, which is a shame because when I think of Spider-Man, immediately I think of the Danny Elfman scores for the Raimi trilogy, and it's like those are iconic. Those are great tracks that really add to the mood and the tone of the film. And then here it's just it almost sounds like temp music in some cases where it's not really memorable. I sure don't remember any of the music from the Mark Webb films. I guess maybe the sort of the theme is like da, 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 that, but
oh yeah, yeah.
otherwise I don't remember a single track
I
from
mean,
those movies
I think
either.
this second one probably has the most memorable one, just because of the electro suite and
I,
Hans
I
Zimmer.
try to repress that movie because that was one of the most disappointing experiences of my childhood.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm like listening to the Hans Zimmer Live in Prague soundtrack or whatever. Like it's the live soundtrack where, Hans Zimmer actually goes and tours and like plays his pieces of his film score like it's a fucking like a fucking live show. It's amazing. He was here in Fort
That's
Worth.
cool.
I missed like the opportunity to see him,
Man,
but he had the Electro
that'd
Suite.
be a hard flex.
Yeah, he had the Electro Suite playing. And I don't know, I like that suite. It's not bad suite. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like even the Pemberton score is more memorable. That one has such a stylization.
100%.
Yeah.
Across the Spider-Verse score is god tier.
Yeah, it's like I'm not gonna forget da. Like yeah, like that's awesome. Especially in Beyond and not Beyond Across the Spider-Verse where you get that with like rock guitars. Like god damn, the Academy really slept on that score that year. That should have been nominated, but it wasn't. For some reason, they decided not to nominate it.
Nope.
Indiana Jones took precedent.
If Across the Spider-Verse was nominated, if Across the Spider-Verse was composed by John Williams, then I would have had a nomination. So
yeah. What film are we talking about again?
Spider-Man: Brand New Day. Should we do final thoughts or ratings?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Gosh. Okay. So it's not a bad film. It's not an amazing film. Certainly, there are elements that are excellent and elements that have no place being here. If it had a better focus, it would easily be in the not top 5 Spider-Man films, but it would be one of the better ones. And I appreciate a lot about it. I like how there was a more intentional style. The action is significantly improved from the other Spider-Man films, and it does dive into the more emotionally interesting parts of Peter Parker's sort of internal and social dilemma, basically. But then the Jean Grey stuff just, I cannot fathom why they decided to put that here. Up until that point, when watching the film, the Brand New Day was riding. I would say a solid 7 out of 10. Then when I was done with the movie, I was like, well, it's probably more like a high 6. And now that I'm talking about it, it's like mid to low 6. I can't say it's a 5 because there are elements that are good, but I think after this conversation, it solidifies that this is arguably the most disappointing recent Spider-Man film. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is more disappointing, but also just admittedly the standards because of the first Amazing Spider-Man wasn't the best either. But considering how this film started off strong and then just totally fumbled in the second act is what makes me say this is the most disappointing Spider-Man film in the past 10 years. So yeah, I would say a low 6 out of 10. I would still recommend you see it. And I think a lot of people have seen it and enjoy it, which I think is excellent. I was just kind of underwhelmed by it, and I wish I liked it more. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. I mean, I guess like it sort of teeters between a 6 and a 7 because I can't bring myself to say it's bad. I mean, I think it's still fairly strong. I think there is a lot to resonate with here. I think Peter's whole dilemma works very well. I think it's something, I wanted to see out of this character for a while. It's him sort of, dealing with shit, like everybody does. I mean, that's what makes Spider-Man relatable for a lot of people. Like he isn't just like, a mega superhero like Superman. He's just sort of a hero that, is sort of like the common everyman, and that's what people like about him. And I like that element. The action's still pretty strong, the direction's strong as well. CG still hit or miss, but it's definitely better than CG in most Marvel films now. But yeah, its story is just a bit sloppy. I felt like there could have been something that was a little bit more cohesive. But I can at least say there is an attempt at some stylization and an attempt at trying to emotionally resonate. I don't think this is like the masterpiece that everybody's saying it is. Like, oh, it's the best Spider-Man film we've seen ever, and it's like, nah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, if if you tell me that Brand New Day is the best Spider-Man film, I just say
Yeah, I mean, far better films. I mean, no, I get it. Like, there are some cover homages to, like, the old Raimi trilogy and even the web films. And I guess like a little bit. I don't really see much from Spider Verse, but I did see like the Insomniac games references. But I could at least say like its heart's in the right place. It is something that's genuine. It doesn't feel overly manufactured like other Marvel stuff does nowadays, but it still has a lot of issues that I think it could have easily avoided. But what are you gonna do? I mean, it's if you want to see it for sure, even if we're not completely jazzed about it, like at least it's worth it in some respects just for the passion. But yeah, I think this is probably like a strong 6 to a light 7. I think that's pretty much where it stays. So, and no, this does not in the slightest get me excited for Avengers Doomsday. Yeah.
yeah, we'll see when that comes out in like what 5 months.
5 months, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna try a double feature with that at all. Or...
Oh, Doomsday? I mean, perhaps. I'll see.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I debating if I want to.
Be a long day.
Oh yeah. I don't know. Am I gonna get? I don't think it's gonna be good. I don't. I mean, I don't know. I'll see it.
I'll reserve my judgment till when I see it.
In Infinity Vision?
We'll see. We'll see.
Dolby format, maybe. I don't know. Can't see it in IMAX.
Brand New Day is coming out in IMAX this week, so maybe they will like squeeze their way into at least the non IMAX GT screens. So a weekend.
Yeah, right now, the one down here is still splitting it with the Odyssey. So, because there's still the late screenings of the Odyssey going on down here. It's crazy. Hey, it gets. I like that people are going to the theater, so I like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Can't complain about that.
Yeah, most definitely. But I don't think you have anything to complain about this, do you? This to wreck.
Yeah. So I recommended for lack of better words, one of the best movies ever made, and I'm overjoyed to the fact that I was able to introduce this film to you because I didn't realize you hadn't seen it, but I recommended the 1986 comedy classic written and directed by John Hughes, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And if you've been living under a rock for the past 40 years, basically Ferris Bueller's Day Off tells the story of the titular character who is a high school slacker from Chicago or the Chicago area who basically fakes sick to take a day off and explore the city with his girlfriend Sloane and his best friend Cameron, all while the dean of the school, played by Jeffrey Jones, wants to basically catch him in the act. And yeah, for lack of better words, this is one of my favorite films. It has been for so many years. It is arguably one of my comfort films. It's like this and Mary Poppins are films that I could just throw on whenever, no matter what the mood is. If I'm happy, I'm sad, or just I just want to have fun, this is the movie I put on. And this is the ultimate fun high school comedy. It really embraces the entertainment of cinema just because it's grounded in a reality that feels very much attainable, because regardless of where you are in life, if you're a student, if you're in your job, you always think, man, what if I just ditch my responsibilities and just go have fun? It's living out this youthful fantasy. And the film embraces that head on, but even though it's a lot of fun and games, something I really admire about the film is the fact that it really does explore the what it means to be a youth growing up and eventually reaching the point of adulthood. And John Hughes, known for writing a lot of high school films and comedies, really tapped into something special with Ferris Bueller in particular because it acts under this facade. Basically, you think that's going to be childish and stupid, but it really has a lot to say. And I almost equate it to as if a high school student were to write and direct a movie capturing how they see the world. This is that living and breathing, and also taking place in Chicago and being from the Chicago area too. This movie is the ultimate love letter to the city. It was shot in and around the city and the surrounding area. So a lot of these locations I'm very much familiar with. And even though it is from the 80s and is very much an 80s time capsule, it is very timeless in terms of what it talks about thematically and conceptually. So yeah, it never gets old for me. And it's one that I really, really love a lot. But I want to know what you thought about this film.
Yeah, so oddly enough, I was thinking I did see this film, but I guess I never did. I mean, maybe because like it's so referenced and it's like how we talked about Ocean's 11. It's just such a big part of pop culture osmosis, and it's like talked about a lot that it's like you kind of think, okay, you've already sort of seen this type of film before, and obviously it's very influential. Um, especially to like those high school films we see so often. I mean, of course, we see that with a lot of Hughes like subsequent films and The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles. Like, we see that a lot with what John Hughes has done. I mean, didn't Fast Times at Ridgemont come out before or after? So I'm trying to remember.
It came out before, but that wasn't John Hughes. That was directed by Amy Heckerling.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, obviously he did take like inspiration. Oh, my mistake. Breakfast Club and 16 Candles came out before, but after this is like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Uncle Buck. And of course he wrote National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and Home Alone. So like obviously like he wrote fucking Flubber. Jeez.
Yeah, no, in the 90s he had a bit of a slump. He was writing a lot of studio family nonsense. So
damn, bro.
Yeah, unfortunately by the 90s John Hughes sort of fell off and he never really regained in his career, unfortunately. And he passed away in I think 2008 or 2009. So really by the 90s he had reached what would be considered like his ultimate like career high. So
yeah, and I guess we sort of see this as like his career high, just in terms
arguably,
of, yeah. I mean, I know like people talk about The Breakfast Club a lot and how iconic that has been, and 16 Candles, of course. But I mean, I guess like Ferris Bueller, maybe I've seen it referenced so often that it's like, do I really need to see it? Just because, like, what Family Guy has referenced this show a fuck ton. You've seen it from other forms of like animation that has referenced it as well. I mean, the fourth wall breaks, obviously like that's a pretty huge impact as well. And so it's like, yeah, this thing does have such a major pop culture legacy. That you never really expect, and so it's like, I was like, yeah, I've never seen this before. I mean, I'm open to watching it, and yeah, I mean, it's definitely great. I mean, I guess the thing I'm most impressed by, like outside of like the writing and the characters, is just the overall presentation. Like so this was apparently shot by cinematographer Tak Fujimoto, who is, worked with Jonathan Demme and Night Shyamalan on a lot of films. Like apparently he shot like Silence of the Lambs in Philadelphia, Sixth Sense. Like, so he is very much like, I wouldn't say like a household name, but definitely like an underappreciated one. Um, just because like some of the shots in this film are like very like oddly striking for a comedy. Like there's just so many ways it just sort of portrays this sort of carefree world in some cases, but it also has like some really interesting like shots that are like, composed so well. Like think I know like people talk about the shot in the art museum or, all three characters just sort of standing and looking at art, but they're, it's very like it feels like very inspired by like, a lot of like French cinema sometimes and just the way it sort of frames itself. And, also like scenes like when they're looking down from the windows of the Willis Tower and, you know, like their heads are on the windows and just like looking at the ground below. It's very interesting and like really engaging just in the way this film's shot. Like just a lot of point of views and just very absurd angles there. It's like how the hell did they shoot that? It's like it's really impressive just how this like cinematography just really engages you in this story, which, I wouldn't say hasn't been done before this point, but there's a lot of like stories that have like since taken the idea of like, okay, ditching school before mom and dad gets home. I think you see it more often in a lot of sitcoms, oddly enough. Um, but I mean, I guess you could say this was sort of the first in some respects. Um, just to have a story completely just based around that whole idea. And yeah, I mean, it's really just like the writing and the presentation that just really make it work. I mean, there's so many iconic lines and just like how they on how these actors sort of portray them. I mean, I think like my favorite actor in this film is oddly enough Jeffrey Jones as the
Oh, he's great.
the dean. Like, oh yeah, he's hilarious. Like, I mean, I sort of like the characters that are sort of like the stickler sort of characters, where they're all very much so like very to the book and just,
Hmm.
but they're also like great foils as well. And I just sort of like how this guy just can't catch a break. Like he's just like going out of his way just for a guy just skipping school. And it's hilarious just how he reacts to like everything happening to him. I mean, he seems like such a no bullshit dude. And then it's like he's constantly taking the front of everything that's going on. But yeah, like a really, really good cast. I think it's really hard not to be impressed by you know, what has been accomplished with this film. So
Yeah, when there's so much to talk about. There's so much about this movie that I absolutely just adore. But to talk about the presentation and to go more into sort of the script too, just I love how this is a comedy. It's a high school comedy, $5 million budget, uh, distributed by Paramount Pictures too. So in the grand scheme of things, this was not a high budget blockbuster, but the same amount of care and effort went into the presentation. Like what you said with the cinematography, it's a really well shot, well presented film with the angles that they get. And also the editing too is really clever. There is this sense of youthfulness in the editing and the pace of it, which is almost atypical for a John Hughes film, because when you see something like Breakfast Club, it's all about the dialogue and the conversations. But here, not only are the jokes really funny, but also the way they're presented. Sometimes they use specific music cues to elevate the humor of a scene more with the Jeffrey Jones character and how he's just a bumbling buffoon for most of it, and how sometimes certain cuts equate to basically delivering the impact and the punchline of the joke too. And even still, out of all of John Hughes' films, he really plays with the film format, because one of the big things, like the fourth wall breaks when Ferris Bueller addresses the audience. Immediately he's establishing that connection between us to get him on his side, because in all fairness, the things that Ferris Bueller does, he's for lack of better words, a pretty selfish character and how he goes about everything. He forces his sick friend to come join him on his like excursions and all that, and he does all this, but he does it with such charisma, which really highlights Broderick's performance. This is still, in my opinion, Matthew Broderick's best role in any movie or anything ever, because he's able to sell everything, and you sense that even though he's a slacker, he put all this time, energy, and thought into creating this elaborate plan. Like, he left no stone unturned so he would never get caught, even though Rooney's on his case. But you almost wonder, oh, wow, imagine if he were able to put this effort into his schooling, then he'd be a genius, basically. But, the presentation really works as well, selling all that. It's not just the dialogue, too. And that's what so many modern comedies fail to recognize, that it isn't just in the jokes. You need to have a good visual eye too to sell all that. And this film highlights that brilliantly. And the script is really interesting for Ferris Bueller, because apparently Hughes wrote it in less than a week. And in any other case, I would say that would be detrimental, because the film really does feel like a series of scenes. Arguably, once the inciting incident of like, oh, Ferris Bueller is going to skip school, the film just sort of feels segmented. But it's not an issue. It's one of the rare films where that type of structure doesn't hurt it, because you're just going along with the ride. You're just totally invested in what he's going to do next, and it constantly surprises you. The stakes essentially get raised more and more. It's like, oh, he's gonna get his girlfriend out of school. What is he going to do? Oh, he's going to take his friend's Ferrari, and then they're going to go into the city. And then, oh, his dad is in like the restaurant bathroom. How's he going to get out of this one? Oh, he's very lucky. And that sense of pace and energy just keeps going throughout. And also just how the film handles the youth versus authority on this rewatch is like really interesting, because when it comes to the intelligence of the film, I think the commentary is really what I find fascinating, because the way that Hughes portrays the adults, they're, for the most part, not all of them are idiots. Jeffrey Jones is pretty foolish, but they're all really deadbeat, buzzkill, like just boring people, like the economics teacher, Ben Stein, Bueller droning on about tariffs and the Great Depression and all that. It's like, no wonder why these kids don't care about it, because the people in charge are not connecting with the youth. And there's this whole idea that everyone that wants to catch Ferris Bueller is in a weird way attracted to the idea of him, because he's so popular, he's so charismatic, and he gets away with it. He gets away with all his schemes. And for the Jeffrey Jones character, Rooney, he's going through all this effort just to try and catch him. But like, why? Like, what do you gain from this? Because at the end of the day, he's just a footnote in Ferris Bueller's career. And I almost think, well, if he's someone that's this power hungry, there's two ways to look at it. Either Rooney was essentially bullied by a Ferris Bueller type in school and never got over that, and just had that fuel his, I guess, disdain for the youth, essentially. Or maybe he has his own past regrets. Maybe he was a Ferris Bueller in an earlier part of his life, because the whole mantra of Ferris Bueller is life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you can miss it. It's all about lost time and just living in the moment, and failing to do that, you just miss out on what's right in front of you. So maybe that's something that he longs for. And it what seems to be a one-dimensional sitcom premise and like character archetypes really, in my opinion, shows a lot more depth to everything. I think that's what's sort of unassuming about the film, is that you think it's just really childish and juvenile, but there is a ton of substance to how the characters are, their personalities, and how they interact with each other, whether it be students on students or adults talking to like teenagers, etc. And so that's one of the best things about John Hughes as a writer, is how he's able to capture that in a way that doesn't feel insincere. You could tell he's been around these environments a lot to have that level of understanding.
Yeah, it's like very relatable. oddly enough,
Hmm.
even just for a comedy that is like very quirky and even off the wall. Like the whole idea, like I kind of like the sort of obscure like signage that says "Save Ferris," and you don't know if it's like something that's in the character's head or if it's just something like that the public is painting. It's like it kind of gives an idea like this whole world is sort of going after Ferris Bueller, and wanting to like ensure that he's safe, ensure that he's protected. And then meanwhile, you have everybody up against like Rooney, who's like, wanting to go after him. And yeah, there's like a lot of good insight with just the idea of like youth versus authority, because when we're adults, we sort of like look at the youth as like, somebody that's gonna, as a generation that is gonna sort of change things, which I mean that has been the case for most of human history in some cases. And you kind of do sense that level of like jealousy from Rooney, who is like, like this guy is just getting, it's like catching every break. Like people are delivering flowers to his house just because he called in for a sick day.
Like they're
It's
acting like
it,
he died.
yeah, it's very comical. It's like it's comical, but it's like sort of you kind of seeing it through the eyes of these characters. I mean, especially like the character of Jeannie, who is played by Jennifer Grey, um,
Hmm.
where she's sort of, yeah, like she's on the verge of graduation as well, and sort of like thinking about the future, and how she's sort of at a point where like she's needing to feel like the adult, the Ferris, but sort of realizing like, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just a kid trying to live life. And I guess like it's kind of funny that she got like an insightful piece of advice from Charlie Sheen of all people.
His
And
best performance in any movie ever.
I don't know. I mean, Platoon
I'm
maybe.
just kidding. I haven't seen Platoon.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like it's very interesting that there's sort of this like like the whole world is rooting for Ferris because like everybody just wants to see this kid succeed, and meanwhile you're seeing you know Ed Rooney just like failing at every turn, and it's like, and so I guess it's like it's sort of like a little bit more like self-aware than it realized, and I think Hughes was sort of aware of it as well, and just knowing that like yeah, like at the end of the day, like everybody has an aspiration to be like Ferris Bueller. It's have it easy, have it you know have it easy, and just have it um I'm trying to think of the word, like have it easy and just have everything given to you on a silver platter. And I guess like that's what sort of makes like the whole inciting stuff in the climax where eventually they do crash like the Ferrari, um and he, and sort of like realizing like at the end of the day you have to sort of deal with the realities and of what you have of your actions in some cases. And Ferris is like pretty much like scot free for most of it. And I guess like there's sort of like Cameron's character, like he's sort of like trying to be realistic about things, but Ferris is like, no, 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 just take a chill day, take a chill day, just you know, come by, pick me up, pick up my girlfriend, and yeah, we're gonna go shoot just shitting in Chicago for a few hours. Like it is a really like it is really like interesting in just how like the film sort of portrays this reality through Ferris's eyes, but also like how there is like bits of fantasy in there. And I kind of do like how the film just sort of worked as it went along, where it kind of took it less serious, like it takes it a little more serious, but not serious to a point where it feels totally confused, if you know what I mean, so.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because this in no way would I consider this a drama, but just when it comes to these characters dealing with real problems of just identity and also facing reality, it's very sincere and just it's like warm too. It really cares and it's delicate, especially with the Cameron character, because I guess when I was younger, I didn't really have a full understanding or grasp of the situation. But like Cameron is essentially just depressed for just the entire movie. And also they hint about like his upbringing. He has a really demanding and controlling father too, and just how that sort of alienated him with the world. And he just becomes basically this pushover. And the whole thing about Cameron towards the end, it's him essentially trying to get the courage to stand up to him. And in a way, even though Ferris Bueller, it almost seems like in hindsight, Ferris was trying to do it more for Cameron, even though he's presenting it in a way that almost seems self-fulfilling. And I sort of believe that at the end of the day, he wants to live his life this way, but also to give Cameron a taste of what he could essentially like take control of, because the whole thing that they talk about in the film is that eventually they're going to go off to college. They're going to see each other during the summer, but once they go off to school, like that's it. Who knows when they're going to reconnect? The friend group essentially will split off, and it's up in the air as if it will regain. So this is sort of like their last hurrah, pretty much. And I don't know, seeing the stuff with Cameron, it adds a level of very strong empathy and sadness too. And he's not like a downer of a character. He has some really funny scenes in the movie too. Just I love Alan Ruck's performance. Also, it just seems very realistic, which is interesting because he was, I think, he was nearly 30 when he filmed the movie, but he acts a lot like a high school student. I feel like I've met a lot of people that were like Cameron when I was growing up too. So he nailed it, that sort of alienation with the world and the feeling that's like nothing, I don't really know what to do. I'm just sort of stuck like this. But he's still young. He still has room to not necessarily change, but just realize the fact that it's like, yeah, you don't have to be like this. There's still opportunities. And yeah, I do really see that. And I want to sort of save this point till a bit later. This goes into like the art museum scene too. But before we get into that, just if we want to talk about just the comedy and just the scenarios, there's so many different types of comedy at play as well, because there's some like dialogue exchanges. There's some jokes that are just really funny. Like when in Ferris's opening monologue, when he's in the shower, he's like, I had a test today. It was about European socialism. Who cares? I'm not European. I don't plan on ever being European. So who gives a crap about that? It's like, that's funny, because that's when you're in school, you're like, yeah, what am I ever going to learn or use my knowledge in? Let's say, unless you want to become a chemist, like, will I ever be using chemistry lessons in my everyday life? I don't think so. It's like, that's funny in and of itself. And then the scenarios, like when Cameron calls Rooney pretending to be Sloane's dad, and it's almost like a Monty Python sketch about them like going back and forth, and then Rooney sneaking into Ferris's house. It's a straight up Looney Tunes cartoon with the score, his like shoe getting in the mud and all that. It's awesome, just the types of comedy too that Hughes plays with. It's not just one thing. It's almost like he's experimenting with all types to see like what will stick, but it's never obnoxious either. It has this very fine level understanding of how comedy works.
Yeah, it's like the writing is just so on point here. I do like I think my favorite moment was when it's when Jeannie was opening the door, and then you see like the the nurse or whatever.
Yeah, the nurse.
Yeah, and I guess there was sort
it's
of
like a non sequitur.
Yeah, like and just the song she sings, and just like the timing of like she was almost gonna sit like drop an F-bomb, and then like closing the door. It's like it's perfect timing. Like it's like there is so much like perfect timing in this film when it comes to like the comedy. Like it all feels, because obviously it very much is like it. Even with like these very dramatic, not like dramatic, but very insightful and introspective moments of just thinking about what the future holds. It's like those moments of comedy like really don't overshadow that at all. It doesn't feel totally confused. It feels ever so flowing. And I really like that. The prank calls are pretty hilarious. I guess like I really like the one where they're at the like the restaurant, and like they're trying to get in, but the maitre d' is not letting them, but they prank call the maitre d' to let to get them inside. Like, yeah, that's pretty funny. Like there are a lot of like really good comedic moments that fit in with that youthful exuberance. Like, it's like kind of like thinking, oh yeah, like taking a day in the city, doing whatever the hell we want, and nobody's gonna stop us. And yeah, it's really, really strong. I actually really enjoy like how those comedic moments just really hit. Like they work so well. Um, so like even the fourth wall breaks, like those are pretty funny as well. Like, it doesn't feel out of place, like, and they're sparingly used. They don't feel overused, like, Deadpool or whatever. They actually work pretty well. So
Yeah, and even I guess to go into the scene, I like despite all the jokes and fun, just the fact that we have something like the art museum scene is just astonishing. I don't think a comedy would do something like that nowadays, but it's like the one time where we seriously have this really therapeutic breather, basically, and which is fascinating because apparently in the test screening process, that scene scored very low and they nearly cut it, which I can't even imagine the movie without it because that's the one part where it really shows the characters engaging with the youth. There's something so bittersweet about them holding on to the rope where the kids are going on that field trip because you see these young kids going through there, but then also you could parallel, yeah, this might be Ferris, Cameron, and Salone's last field trip together too, and there's something really sad about it, or how Cameron looks into the pointless painting and how that, which is a real painting, it's a real painting at the Art Institute in Chicago, and it's beautiful too. Just how he looks into it, just in this big, big work of art, just narrows in on the little tiny dot. It's like this one small thing that makes up a greater whole. But like when you stare into it, it's just almost nothingness, and which maybe that's how Cameron feels. And when you really break it down that way, it's heartbreaking. It's a heartbreaking look into this kid's psyche. And I don't know, just the way that the montage is paced to the choice of music, it's a perfect movie scene. And I struggle to find another one where that like emotionally like makes me feel that way. And it's crazy because this is not a drama, this is a comedy. And that level of artistic intent is what makes the movie really special too. And just the fact that as a Chicago film, this is the ultimate Chicago film. There's no other movie that captures the city in this type of loving manner too. It's just, it has all the locations as well. And something that is really cool about the movie, and this goes for all of John Hughes's work, is that a lot of it is shot and set in the greater Chicago suburbs. And he grew up there as well. So he knows how how the people of these communities really act and talk, and it feels very distinct. And a lot of the locations where they shot are actually like fairly close. I'm like fairly familiar with these areas too, since I grew up around here. So like Cameron's house is a real house. The school that they go to is also, I've ran cross country meets around there, for example. And when I was younger, when I was like really into this movie, I did like a location tour of Ferris Bueller. I looked up like where are all these locations in the film, and majority of them are still standing. So it like that's why I have this almost personal connection with the film too, just because it feels like the city itself takes on such a big role and almost captures it. It's, if you're from the Chicago area, that in and of itself makes Ferris Bueller all the more special, is that it feels like it was made for the citizens of Chicago in a way. I think that's what John Hughes's goal was. He equated it to how Woody Allen films are like a love letter to New York, and he wanted to sort of do that for Chicago. And honestly, Ferris Bueller is better than any Woody Allen film. I'm not gonna lie. So
yeah, it's like
so he succeeded.
yeah, you could tell like it's breathing Chicago purely. I think it's because like it's like hard. I mean, I guess like the only other film that sort of does feel like Chicago is the Blues Brothers. Like
That was
that's
a good
also,
example. Yeah.
yeah, it's another good example of like capturing Chicago. But this one obviously feels a little more grounded compared to like the wackiness of that film, which maybe we'll talk about someday. But it's not the upcoming one, no. But I do really enjoy like how Chicago's captured. Like I no, I grew up in Minnesota, but my great grandmother like used to actually live in Chicago. I think I forgot what suburb, but apparently like, Mr. T was her neighbor at one point.
Oh,
Which,
no way.
yeah, yeah, fucking crazy. Um, but yeah, she was. But yeah, we used to take trips down to the city, and there is such like a life to the city. Like it's very active, but there's also some. It's like a level of atmosphere there too. That like feels real. It doesn't because I guess like a thing of like New York and LA. It's like there's always something so glamorous with it, and Chicago is just a little more rugged, a little bit more you know, I guess feels a little more normalized. Like it isn't quite the melting pot that we see in other cities, but I mean, there still are melting pots in Chicago. Like I know they got a Chinatown there and
Mhm.
a lot of other things, but there is such a personality to Chicago and such a passion that just really drives this film. Um, like I don't think there's like a film where you actually feel like the community was like this involved. I mean, I guess like Blues Brothers is probably the closest because of those car chases, but like this is like pretty insane. Just like how he sort of integrates this film within these environments, and it's like you're just living here. That's what it really feels like, and it's really impressive and just how the setting is just captured in this way in a way that is like sort of realistic. That is, it's like definitely like one of the great film cities out there too. I mean, it's a city that breathes film too. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, a good example is The Bear, the show
Mhm.
that just recently wrapped up. I think it was wrapped up completely. I think it had its series finale this season, but that's that's Chicago, and of course the Dark Knight was filmed there. So like yeah,
Mhm.
I mean if you ever been by those tunnels, like that's where the Dark Knight was filmed, and especially those big action set pieces. So like yeah, it's like awesome to see, you know, like how the city sort of has boomed in terms of like film iconic status on just like the level of New York and LA. So yeah, I'm very like happy about that, and but yeah, I think in terms of a film that captures Chicago so well, it's probably this and Blues Brothers for me. But yeah, it's really awesome.
I like what you said about how the community sort of like comes together too, because you see that especially in the twist and shout scene, which
Hmm.
from a spectacle standpoint is seriously impressive. This is obviously pre CGI, so those are real crowds. They probably did shut down that entire street. I know like what street that is too. I've been on that corner, and it's just the seeing all like people of all walks of life, whether it be of class or gender or age too, they're all coming together and like reveling in this youthful excitement, seeing this guy sing along to the Beatles. And I love how there's some shots where it shows construction workers dancing, or like the one window washer sort of waving. Those were real like construction workers, just sort of they just got that on film, and it adds to the authenticity too, because what I find about John Hughes films too, especially in this one, is that they're because he was from the area, he was able to capture something that was so believable and relatable too. Because one thing that's interesting about where Ferris Bueller was shot and ostensibly where it takes place, they are very extremely wealthy areas of the Chicago suburbs, like along Lake Michigan. Those towns are among the wealthiest in the country. So these kids, the characters come from loaded families, but the not problems, but what they're dealing with in terms of trying to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their life in terms of career, job, college, or even in Ferris and Stallone's case, potentially getting married too. Like those are universal qualities that it doesn't matter like how you grew up or how much money you had. Like that's something that you're inevitably going to face, and I think that's what makes the film so successful, because it's not like Mean Girls where the the class disparity, I guess, or the social disparity is such a big plot point. Here, it's more just, yeah, it doesn't matter where you come from. You're inevitably going to have to face this. And that's sort of the magic of it, because even though, yeah, Sloane has like a Cartier watch, or Cameron's dad is wealthy enough to have that insanely modernist glass home, or like have the Ferrari and all that, it almost doesn't matter because you're inevitably going to experience that. And that's what's so the universality of that the film addresses is, I would argue, its strongest asset, besides it just being very quotable and iconic too. But thematically, that's why I feel like it's made such a big impact.
Oh yeah, it's you can't really dispute it. I mean, like I said, this is a film that has been so ubiquitous with pop culture, and like even if you haven't seen the film, the references, like the use of the "Oh Yeah" song. Like
Mm-hmm.
you see
A
that
great
in
soundtrack too.
yeah, like you see that in other films, and then the art scene has been referenced, or the scene where Cameron sees that the miles are built up on the Ferrari, and he screams right into the camera, and it's like you know, and it's kind of like the editing sort of portrays it as he's screaming so loud that the entire city of Chicago could probably hear him. Like it's a very, it's like so many scenes that are like, oh, and like of course like Bueller, and like that Bueller scene, or the pratfalls from Rooney. It's like, yeah, there's like definitely like a lot of moments here that you could see like have been referenced heavily. It's really hard to
Mm-hmm.
escape like the quotable nature, or like just the iconic nature of this film, which I find to be like enjoyable. But it sounds like underneath all that iconic images and scenes, it's like there's you know a very deep message in there about youth. So it's nice to see like this film like still has like a level of resonance, even if it's like completely emblematic of like the 1980s. Like
Yeah, and also like was part of the comedy too comes from how it's the difference between youth and authority, because we obviously mentioned that with Rooney himself just being a total caricature, but I also really love when like the kids themselves have to exercise a sense of authority too, because like the one scene I think of is, well, there's two. It's when Cameron is prank calling Rooney pretending to be Sloane's father. It's almost like therapeutic for him, like he's sort of venting his frustrations in that moment, and like under the facade of being an authoritative figure. Or even when Ferris and the gang go to the French restaurant, and he pretends to be the Sausage King of Chicago, Abe Froman, and trying to demand a table and like exercising that authority. But he's still at the end of the day a kid, so he has Ferris has a lot of stuff quote unquote figured out, but he's still young at the end of the day, so he doesn't really have the fullest understanding. So it does come off as a childish view of snobbery, but it adds a lot to the comedic impact and effect of that scene too, which I really find funny, because it's almost like they're sort of role playing what they see as this figure of authority to sort of vent out their frustrations about what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis in school, especially when you're under the guidance of Ed Rooney too, who's just a no nonsense. He's not even the principal, he's the dean. So which is, I don't know, everyone's so like boring and like monologue-y. But even just, yeah, the side characters are a lot of fun. We didn't even mention Rooney's secretary,
oh yeah,
Grace,
she's
as
great.
well, who's awesome. Just like her opening. I love her introduction, how she's her insane hairdo that could have only come out of 1986. She pulls out like three pencils out of her hair as well. It's
Yeah,
so good.
I like the how oblivious Ferris's dad is. Like
Yeah,
just
that's
like the moments where you think Ferris is gonna like he's gonna see Ferris doing all these things, but he's just so oblivious. And I guess that sort of adds into the commentary that he's like sort of wrapped up in the whole world of being an adult, that he's barely taking time to like notice, which like I said, it fits in with that the life going fast quote or whatever. So like, yeah, there is like a way for that like that message does resonate pretty heavily,
Mhm.
like just throughout the film. Even when it's not even said, like because that's like said at the end of the movie. So like you're
Oh, in the very
seeing,
beginning too.
yeah, the very beginning and the very end. So it's like you kind of realize how like the whole film is just like these kids are just sort of like running amok in Chicago, and like the adults are just like either just like barely paying attention to it, or they're just like, yeah, whatever. you know? So it is sort of like a very fitting quote. So I like that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm trying to think. There's like one other thing that I wanted to mention. I wrote a lot of notes actually when I was watching this movie.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I'm just looking at
yeah.
like some trivia now. I guess like so John Hughes was a pretty big fan of the Beatles, so he included Twist and Shout in that one
Hmm.
sequence. And I guess Paul McCartney apparently hated that sequence. because
Oh, I did
appar-
hear about that.
yeah, because
Yeah,
apparently he didn't like the film, like the fact that there was like over like some brass in it, because of the marching band.
that's
Um,
true. Yeah.
yeah, and then like he was just like he's like, I felt bad for offending him, but um, you know, he is right. Like if the band's on screen, you got to hear the band. But it is kind of like funny that like McCartney liked the film, but like hated hated that sequence in particular. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking at some trivia too. There's a lot of interesting little tidbits about the production as well, mostly because they did shoot in Chicago. Like, and some things that probably changed on a whim. Because one, the scene at Wrigley Field when they're watching the Cubs game, apparently Hughes wanted to shoot it at Comiskey Park because he was a White Sox fan. But I think because of budgetary reasons, they had to shoot at Wrigley Field, which is arguably the more iconic of the two Chicago baseball stadiums. There
Piss off
also
White
was,
Sox fans that way, bro.
yeah, I mean, I'm more of a White Sox fan, so I wish we had some White Sox representation, but, um, you know, um, apparently there was also a lot of talks about like the casting too. So the role was supposedly written for Broderick, but some other actors that were considered were Anthony Michael Hall, Johnny Depp, John Cusack, Jim Carrey, George Clooney, Michael J. Fox, and Tom Cruise. All of those would have been very interesting. It's like definitely from that era, I could see all of them playing it in some way, but something about the way Broderick handles the role feels very distinct and specific that it would, I don't know, it's just he carries a specific energy too.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a role that was sort of meant for him. I mean, admittedly, I'm not too big of a fan of Matthew Broderick. I mean, I mean, I can't feel like every role he's done, it's always sort of been in that very like high pitched, voice. I mean, I guess like works for this. I mean, it works for Lion King, okay. But I don't know. It's he's and I guess it worked for the producers as well. The Broadway show he was on, but I guess I don't know. I mean, but this role fits him perfectly. I think the high pitched like voice fits very well with the character. Which I mean, no, it is his actual voice. I think I can't really fault him for it, but
Yeah.
I guess it's like a matter
It,
of like a personal preference. But I think he works well enough here. Like it's definitely
yeah,
a role.
he works very well
Yeah.
in this one in particular. I really like. I mean, there's everyone's just really good in the movie too. We did mention Jennifer Grey, I believe. Some random little cameos too. Obviously, we talked about Charlie Sheen. Richard Edson, who we previously saw in Super Mario Brothers. He's one of the Koopa brothers. He's one of the parking attendants
Oh, okay. Yeah.
in the film,
No, no.
and Christy Swanson, who she was the girl who said, "Oh yeah, Ferris Bueller, my best friend's brother's sister's girlfriend, saw him pass out 31 flavors." She played Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the original film, so she was is a very early role for her as
Uh,
well.
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like Mia Sara in the film too, who plays Salome. I feel like she hasn't post Ferris Bueller. She didn't really do very much, but I thought she brought a lot of like warmth and fun to the role, and I like how throughout the film too, you see that Ferris is, in sort of ways, Ferris's influence is kind of going to her in terms of how she's kind of like a schemer too. Like when she calls um, the restaurant, pretending like, oh yeah, the Sausage King of Chicago, Abe Froman, he's wearing the vest and all that, like playing in along with him is
Mhm.
really really fun too. And yeah, I wish I wish she did more. Basically, not only in the film, but also just in her career because she didn't really do much after this. So
Apparently, she was in Life of Chuck.
she was in Life of Chuck, and
Yeah.
that was like her first screen role in 10 years. So funny enough, that was one of the reasons why I was looking forward to Life of Chuck was because Mia Sara was in it,
Yeah.
not the fact that it was Mike Flanagan.
Oh, and I guess she was in
So
the short-lived WB show, Birds of Prey. Not the
yep,
movie, but there was a TV show that was based on that comic book, which I guess existed. I guess it's a pre-CW show,
hmm
which makes a lot of sense. But sort of a Smallville-esque, I guess. Okay.
yeah.
Interesting.
Apparently Molly Ringwald was also, she wanted that part too, but
Hmm.
I think John Hughes said like no. So
I mean, honestly, I
um,
feel like Ringwald, I feel like Mia Sara, like, understated performance works well enough. I feel like Ringwald could have made it work, but I kind of glad I
mhm.
went to Sarah at the end of the day. Um,
Yeah. I also do find it very amusing that for Jeffrey Jones, this I think was his follow-up film after Amadeus, where
mhm.
he was played another villainous role. But it's very amusing that he went from that period drama about the high class society of Mozart and aristocracy, and then he went to playing a modern day principal who's equally villainous in this. But he nailed both. It
Oh,
was
yeah. I mean,
awesome.
I mean, it's his deadpan delivery works. Um, I guess I was like surprised about Alan Ruck because I love Succession.
hmm
So I guess like I did not know this is where he came from before. And I know he was in some other like shows and comedies, but I guess I didn't really go anywhere. But yeah, he was yeah, really good in Succession. Watch
hmm
Succession.
Maybe I will.
Yeah.
Maybe I should
I
watch
mean, the
Succession.
thing to know about Cameron Fry is that he was very interested in politics from a very young age. Yeah.
He was also in Speed as well. I remember him in that. So
um, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of iconic things about this one. I mean, like, holy shit! Like I mean, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia. They got like so much.
yeah,
So, I mean, I know when people are like, oh, Wikipedia is not a reputable source. It's a whole collection of sources that are considered
mhm.
that way. But
I think Barbara Bush referenced Ferris Bueller's like mantra in one of her speeches.
yeah,
Apparently,
yeah. Didn't she like paraphrase the quote or something? I'm trying to remember.
something along the lines. Yeah.
Yeah,
What was it?
yeah.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, so okay, so it was at a commencement speech. She said, "quote Find the joy in life because, as Ferris Bueller said on his day off, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you can miss it." Responding to the audience's enthusiastic applause, she added, "quote I'm not going to tell George you clap more for Ferris than you clap for George."
Yeah, that's crazy. Nah, I don't know. It's. I mean, when a film quote gets more claps than the president of the United States,
The
like
first lady,
yeah,
or
by the first lady, or even quoted by the first lady, like then that's when you know you reached a high level of impact. Um,
absolutely,
yeah,
yeah,
like you don't see that anymore.
yeah, and thankfully. no sequel, no spin. Well, apparently there was a TV spinoff in 1990 that lasted one season. I've never seen it, and I never want to, honestly. But there was never a sequel. There was
Jennifer
never a
Aniston.
remake. There was never a
Jeez.
reboot, and it doesn't need it. We don't need it because it's perfect the way it is. So don't ruin it.
Yeah, apparently it only aired with 13 episodes after it. I got slammed by critics. And apparently, like, Jennifer Aniston was in this before
What?
her Friends days.
Really?
That's interesting.
I didn't know that.
Oh, Jane Lynch and Cloris Leachman too. That's interesting. Uh, I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, I am glad that the film never. Like, I am glad that it sort of just lived as its own thing. I mean, kind of showing something that doesn't need to have a a spinoff or a sequel. But apparently there was a planned spinoff when Paramount Plus took off, but
Wait, there.
thank thankfully
Oh,
they scrapped it after the
I forgot
dumbass
about
merger.
that.
So
It was about the parking attendants, right?
yeah, I believe so. I don't know why.
Oh yeah. Well, good. Good they didn't do it.
I don't know why.
Oh, the merger of Skydance and Paramount Global. Okay, good. The only good thing to come out of that was that we didn't have a Ferris Bueller spinoff.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
yeah.
I mean,
I,
much so.
I don't know. It's like if that happened, what would they do? It would just be them getting into shenanigans
Yeah.
for an hour and a half. It would just be Team U Ferris Bueller set in the Ferris Bueller universe.
Yeah.
Like, would their parking attendant boss be trying to like follow them or something?
Probably not. I don't know. I think I'm kind of glad it lives as its own thing.
Mhm.
I mean, thing to know about comedy sequels, majority of the time they're not good. I mean, I think it's very rare you get like a good comedy sequel out there.
Yeah, not often.
Yeah, it's a very rare thing. So I'm kind of glad like Hughes never like took the ambition to do it.
Yeah.
So
Or worst case scenario, he would just do the same thing because he did that with Home Alone 2. Home Alone 2 is just Home Alone 1, except it's in New York. He didn't really change much. So I guess in fairness, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and the original Vacation are fairly different, but
yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like Hughes would have done the same thing and it would just lost the magic. So
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like a Ghostbusters thing where it could really only work once, and I'm glad it's staying where it is. Like it only can work in the '80s. It only could work with John Hughes and Matthew Broderick. I mean, I can't really see it working beyond that. So
no, yeah, and especially Broderick is still doing work, but obviously with John Hughes no longer around, just you can't replicate that. No matter how talented the screenwriter, I know John Hughes is definitely like an icon, but he's genuinely like one of my favorite screenwriters, and just because he hits how high school students act and feel very well, and even though he did that more in the 80s when obviously we weren't alive at that time, but it doesn't matter the time period. It's timeless though, because everyone will feel that in some form. So that's why like Breakfast Club is great. That's why Ferris Bueller is great for capturing that so perfectly.
yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think it's one of those rare films where it's really hard to have an issue with it. I mean, I can understand like the comedy being a little bit
Yeah.
much for some people. I don't know. I think it is fluid. It's a very fluid comedy. It doesn't feel overly like effortful trying to like shove jokes in your face, and it doesn't, but it also doesn't feel like a downer either. It actually feels rather fluid, which it's very good. It's a good balance between just the comedy aspects and then some little light drama in between. So
Yeah, should Should we go into ratings or final thoughts?
Yeah,
Let's see how much.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, I mean, it's definitely one that's been on the list for a while. And I guess like part of me was intimidated by seeing it because like, oh, okay, there's so many iconic scenes in this movie that like, it's really hard to watch it without like knowing those scenes are in there. But it definitely is a very solid and great comedy. I think it definitely has a lot to offer just in terms of the writing and the performances. And yeah, I mean, it definitely breathes Chicago. I mean, it actually makes me want to go back there at some point. So it's a very uplifting comedy. Like you can, even with those iconic scenes and lines in mind, you can't really like, downplay it. It's like, it's a really, really strong comedy. So yeah, I think definitely a 9 out of 10. I'm part of me wants to give it a 10, but I don't know. I mean, I think, I don't know, maybe on rewatch, but I think 9 out of 10. But I don't really have many issues with this film at all. It's kind of insane, like how very intricate and precise it is, which is what it's doing. So
Yeah, for me, this is the easiest 10 out of 10. I love it. I don't think there's a single issue I have with it. It's a perfect high school movie. It's a perfect comedy. It's a perfect Chicago movie. And I don't know, just every time I watch it, I grow to appreciate it more and more, especially as I'm getting older too. It's like strangely, as you get older, you appreciate a lot more about what it's saying, because when you're a kid, you just appreciate it for just how it's so goofy and wacky. But then once you get to the point when you graduate high school, you really start to understand the a lot of the nuance of the script that Hughes was able to bring out. And yeah, it's one of the few films where too it's like I could recommend it to anybody. And I really, to my knowledge, I don't know anyone that really dislikes this movie. I've heard some people say like, oh, I like it, but I don't love it, which, I totally understand. But there's never met a single person who's like, oh, Ferris Bueller, that film sucks. It's terrible. It's like, I don't think there's anybody out there. If you do, you just don't have a soul. So yeah, I love it. And I'm very happy I got to introduce it to you. And I hope to see it again many more times in the future. So yeah, 10 out of 10.
it's good. That's a good recommendation. Something long time in the making. But I guess this was destined when we decided to do this. So but yeah, that's awesome. Boy.
I believe it's your rec now.
Yep, it is. Yeah, so I sort of going back and forth a little bit, but admittedly, just like days when I put myself into like a discog kick where, there's like an artist that, resonates with me a lot, in some cases. And then it's like, all of a sudden I'm listening to this shit like probably for a month, I mean, I get those runs of a lot of them, Billy Joel, the Beatles, Kendrick Lamar, like, yeah, there's a lot of them. But there's an artist that I was never expecting to get that from. And I don't really know if there was a biopic that came out probably, I would like to say over 10 years ago to this point, that is actually probably one of the best biopics in recent memory. I don't think it's talked about enough. And, I think there is something to be said about the artist in question too, because about a year ago, he passed away. And I think it was like a day when it's like, I never really knew or understood like the impact until I listened to the album that he and a certain bunch of California boys like made in the 60s prior to Sgt. Pepper, that completely was ahead of its time and changed the music landscape forever. And of course, I'm talking about the late, great Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, who's, probably one of the greatest music producers of all time. And the biopic in question is Love and Mercy, starring Paul Dano and John Cusack as Brian Wilson.
Cool. I think did we have a conversation about this movie? Like not recording, but messaging?
I believe so. Because I think I
Okay.
watched it and then like, oh yeah, we gotta watch it at some point. And I think this is a good time to like talk about it. Because I think there is something to be said about it, and very underrated biopic in my opinion. So I think it is going to be worth the conversation.
Cool. Yeah. I'm not as familiar with the Beach Boys. I've heard some tracks, but don't really know much of the story or the lore. So I'm interested to see what this is about.
Yeah, for sure. Encourage you to listen to Pet Sounds. I encourage everybody to listen to Pet Sounds.
Hmm.
More known as the precursor to the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper, which oddly enough, like that album ended up being much more successful than Pet Sounds did. But if you like to hear us talk about Love and Mercy and don't want to get spoiled, watch the film before the next episode. We release every other Monday around 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, and we publish to Spotify and YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, feel free to hit us with a follow. And if you're listening on YouTube, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you get notified when we release new videos. And of course, we have social media. We got Letterboxd, Twitter, and Instagram. And feel free to hit us with a follow with those. And yeah, I guess life is moving very, very fast. Don't miss it.
Don't miss it. Yeah.
No, definitely don't miss it. I mean, actually, probably one of the quotes I wanted to say, but I didn't think of saying it. It's like you either die a Ferris or live long enough to be a Rooney.
That's a good quote.
Oh yeah, it's too true. It's too true. um, but yeah. Until next time, I've been Daniel.
I've been Matthew.
And I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
It's over. Go home.